The most scintillating man on the internet.
Right, so before we even start, I have a correction to make to my previous video. You see, I asserted in that video on ASM 375 that David Michelini deliberately mischaracterized Peter Parker by making him easily accept a deal with Venom to not interfere with him in the future, thereby planting a seed in readers' minds that something wasn't quite right with Peter, and therefore making it easier to accept the clone as the real Peter whenever he was reintroduced. I thought this was the largely accepted interpretation of this story, but apparently that isn't the case. According to a Marvel editor at the time, Glenn Greenberg, the thing that should be pointed out is that when Peter first made the pact with Venom, the Clone Saga had not yet even been conceived, so it's not like this pact was an intentional part of a future story plan, or to drop a hint that maybe all was not right with Peter. The truth of the matter is that Peter was simply written way out of character in that Venom story, and the Clone Saga writers were later able to pick up on it, acknowledge it, and use it to their advantage. So, my mistake. Let's hope I do better research in the future. Moving on. Back in 1992, comic sales were in decline due to a variety of factors. Those factors included market oversaturation and the beginnings of the speculator boom. Now, what I mean by the speculator boom, if you aren't familiar with that term, is that tourists with little interest in the art form were just buying up swaths of comics in the belief that they were investing in a gold mine, not understanding that the market price is driven largely by scarcity and that simply having a number 1 on the cover was pretty much meaningless. DC came up with the idea to boost sales of their flagship character Superman by, well, killing him off and investing heavily in marketing that event. This did indeed generate sales of $30 million of just the Death issue itself, bolstered by a slew of media attention even in mainstream news outlets.
As the Man of Steel met his match, an editor at DC Comics says Superman will die November 18th. Mike Carlin says a November comic book will show the demise of the costumed crime fighter during a fight to save Metropolis. The only question is, will Superman stay dead? Carlin is non-committal, noting, quote, "We really don't know what death means to Kryptonians."
Of course, this ultimately had the effect of damaging the Superman and DC brands and exacerbating the speculator problem even further, but few people seemed to pay attention to that at the time. DC started manufacturing event after event, such as Nightfall for Batman and Emerald Twilight for Green Lantern. Marvel, of course, desperately wanted a slice of that pie for themselves, so they went about outlining a plan for rebooting Spider-Man by bringing back, well, you know. In comics leading up to the main event, Aunt May has been speaking with some mystery man on the phone. After she has been hospitalized and is in a coma following a stroke, we see a scene of our mystery man trying to visit Aunt May in the hospital before he's scared off when he realizes that Peter is there as well. Everything culminates in Spectacular Spider-Man 216. We see someone who appears to be Peter visiting with Aunt May, only for Spider-Man to swing by outside. Our mystery man rushes to the roof to confront Spider-Man and, well... So how exactly did this proposal come across to other editors at the time? Well, according to another comment from Glenn Greenberg, quote, "I wasn't as involved with the Spidey books at this point as I would later be, but I can tell you this. The Spider office was being very hush-hush about the whole thing. They wouldn't let anyone, not even fellow Marvel editors, know who the mystery man was who had been making appearances in the books for several months, and who had been calling Aunt May on the phone. Everyone connected to it was sworn to secrecy, and they took this code of silence very seriously. The only reason why I was privy to the mystery man's identity at that time was because I was really good friends with the Spider-Man assistant editor at the time, Mark Bernardo, who remains one of my closest friends to this day, and he trusted me enough to know I wouldn't go around blabbing about it. I remember we were walking down the street one day in Manhattan, right near the Fashion Institute of Technology building, and after pressing Mark for a while about the big secret plans he was involved with, he finally broke down and revealed to me that the clone was coming back. Well, my reaction, to be honest, was one of absolute dismay. I thought it was a terrible idea. My feeling was that the clone story was best left in the past. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed those original stories and found the ending very touching and poignant, and I thought that Jackal was a hoot, but I felt that dredging up all that stuff again was a mistake. Mark calmly replied, "Give it a chance. You don't know all the plans we have lined up, and I think once you approach it with an open mind, you'll see that it can work. I was really dubious, but I shrugged and told him that it would take a lot to convince me. But I indeed kept my mouth shut. I didn't tell anyone, and I think it's safe to say that I was one of the first people outside of the Spider-Man office to know that this was going to happen. Part 1. Web of Spider-Man number 117. Written by Terry Cavanaugh. Oh dear. With pencils by Stephen Butler. To be fair, the confrontation between the two Petes does at least acknowledge continuity. For example, Peter has no reason to jump to the clone conclusion, so he demands to know what kind of doppelganger the clone is. And on top of that, after the clone does reveal his true identity, Peter can't believe it since he saw the clone die. He doesn't think about the smokestack incineration, but still, it's something. This whole thing about Peter not wanting to hear his name is part of an overarching theme in the Spider titles at the time, of Peter thinking of himself as just Spider-Man and not Peter, as some defense mechanism to hide his pain. After a brief battle, the clone knocks Peter unconscious and takes his leave. The rest of the issue does not exactly go in a predictable direction. Ravencroft Hospital, basically Marvel's Arkham Asylum, is playing host to a group of not at all abnormal-seeming characters that Dr. Ashley Kafka welcomes with a smile. Kafka, who's somehow gotten much younger and more attractive lately, invites this entourage of freaks into the Institute to assist her somehow while she recuperates from her recent injuries caused by Shriek. Said freaks are Chakra, Boone, Mr. Noct, and Medea. They're led by this flamboyant character, Dr. Judas Traveler. Unsurprisingly, Traveler and his minions immediately take over, teleport the entire hospital staff outside, with one important exception we'll find out about later, and erect an energy cocoon around the hospital. Traveler somehow manages to subdue the Chameleon, Shriek, and even Carnage. Chakra apparently has some funky astral projection powers, and uses those to send a message to Spider-Man to meet them at the Institute. After Peter regains consciousness, he hears that Traveler's deal is thus: he'll kill all the inmates unless Peter stops him, but if Peter does stop him, all the inmates will be freed. Okay. Pete decides to go to the hospital, and as soon as he arrives, that's where the issue ends. Writing, 4 out of 10. So the good stuff here is mostly with the confrontation between Peter and the clone. I don't find the basic plot of Traveler offering a dilemma to Peter as a means of studying evil or something very riveting. Traveler's minions are kind of interesting, at least visually. Art, you know what? I was going to give this a 5 out of 10. But looking back, I mean, yeah, I can see how that's really unfair, actually, because, let's see, look. Like, again, I still don't really care for Stephen Butler's character models, but that's one thing. But looking at his panel layouts, he does an excellent job of making everything, especially like the action scenes, look really cinematic. And he does all kinds of tricks with, like, let's see, let me find some examples here. Yeah, things like panel violations, and yeah, and here we are again. And let's see, there's some other stuff with, go further ahead here. Yeah, these things like this jagged, panel border that helps really, like, sell the impact of the hit and everything. And then whenever the monumental scene comes up, whenever the clone reveals his identity, you can see how he shifts to like a neutral black background to really like isolate the scene and really make it stand out in the middle of all the action. And even when things calm down, like the scene inside Ravencroft, when we first get inside Ravencroft, and I just went right past it. Come on. Yeah. Yeah, so the panel layouts and everything obviously, calm down appropriately enough, but we still have these neat little tricks with like the violations and everything to really give like the first appearance of Traveler like a lot of weight and a lot of presence and everything. So yeah, I don't really like his portrayal of Carnage though. So anyway, all that taken into account, I have to say, so what the hell, let's bump it up to 6.5 out of 10.